Good morning, good
Okay,
afternoon,
good
good
afternoon.
evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us here on today's webinar. And we entitled this webinar. So thank you so very much to MIE International Modern Education for inviting myself to give a presentation this morning on international professional development skills for the
Thank you too.
21st century. You're welcome. We're looking at building global relevance in a connected world. So whether you are a university student preparing to enter the workplace or an educator shaping future generations or public servants supporting national development, maybe you're an entrepreneur building a business or a professional seeking career advancement. These themes that we deliver today will discuss some important concepts. Organizations are increasingly seeking individuals who can communicate effectively, adapt to change, work across cultures, demonstrate leadership, solve complex problems, and contribute meaningfully, within diverse, changing environments. Throughout this webinar, we will explore the competencies that are helping professionals remain relevant, competitive, and effective in our changing world. My hope is that you will leave today's session with practical insights, renewed confidence, and a clear roadmap for your own professional growth. Before we begin, I encourage you to approach this session with an open mind. Reflect on your own experiences, consider areas for growth, and think about how the concepts discussed today can be applied in your professional and personal life. Before we explore the changing professional landscape, allow me to briefly introduce myself and share a bit of experience. Um, my work has spanned several areas, including leadership development, international relations, education, professional coaching, cross-cultural communication, and humanitarian engagement. Over the years, I've had the privilege of working with professionals, educators, students, nonprofit organizations, community leaders, international partners across many cultural and professional environments. And these experiences have reinforced a simple but powerful lesson, and that is that technical expertise alone really determines long-term success. Again and again, I've observed that the professionals who thrive are often those who possess strong interpersonal skills, cultural awareness, adaptability, integrity, and a commitment to continuous learning. And I have witnessed talented individuals achieve remarkable success, not because they had all the answers, but because they were willing to learn, collaborate, and adapt. And likewise, I have seen organizations overcome significant challenges when leaders created environments built on trust, communication, respect, and a shared purpose. Today's webinar is informed by practical observation from education, leadership, development, international engagement, and professional practice. In addition to sharing information, I hope to facilitate a reflection um, that would encourage growth, provide practical tools for you participants that you can apply in your professional lives. As we move through today's session, I invite you to think critically, share your experiences and identify specific actions that can strengthen your own professional effectiveness. In one word, what professional skill do you believe is most important for success today? I would like to invite participants to think about this as we move into our presentation. Bear this in mind. What motivated you to attend this webinar today? Maybe career advancement, leadership development, international opportunities, professional growth, communication improvement, or personal development. And, we've introduced the purpose of our session. Let us establish a clear understanding now of what we hope to achieve together over the next few minutes. Every successful journey begins with a clear destination. So before we move into the main content, it is important to understand, and overcome some challenges that we may, be looking at in terms of what we want to achieve today. One first objective is to understand the changing nature of the professional landscape, the world of the work that we are, seeing evolving, and the professionals that are coming out of that environment, um, because they wish to maintain competitive skills and to be seen as top tier in the area. We will explore cultural intelligence because in our interconnected world, the ability to work respectfully as well as effectively with people from different backgrounds is a significant professional advantage, one of the skills that the world of work is looking for. We'll focus on communication because communication remains one of the most valuable skills across every professional industry and even leadership level. We'll examine leadership because leadership today extends beyond authority and position. It involves influence, service, ethical conduct, and the ability to unite diverse groups around common goals. And we'll discuss emotional intelligence and adaptability. These two qualities, have become important in navigating uncertainty and change. And then we'll look at exploring ethics in human rights and professional responsibility because it's important to recognize that competence without integrity can ultimately undermine professional success. We will examine critical thinking and we'll also discuss lifelong learning because it's very important to understand that no matter what level you are at, professional development is something that doesn't stop. Um, we will conclude by developing a practical action plan that you can participate in and you can use to continue your professional development beyond our webinar today. Um, I would also, like to say thank you very much once again for joining us here. The world of work has changed in a lot of different ways, and some key transformations are things like technology, because technology has accelerated communication across borders. Organizations operate across multiple countries and regions, and we have remote and hybrid work models that have become quite common, especially after COVID. Professionals now compete and collaborate globally and skills has become more important than geographical location. Continuous learning has become essential for career sustainability, especially in a changing world. And if we compare today's professional environment with that of, 20 or even 10 years ago, we can clearly see that the nature of work has undergone profound transformation. Historically, many professionals spent the majority of their careers within a single organization, often within the same city or even country. Career progression followed relatively predictable pathways, with employees moving through established hierarchies based on seniority, experience, and long-term service. It was not uncommon for individuals to join an organization shortly after completing their education, and they remain there until retirement, building deep institutional knowledge and even professional relationships over decades. Educational qualifications obtained early in life could remain relevant for many years because industries evolve at a slower pace and technological change was less disruptive. Professional expertise was often developed through experience accumulated over time rather than through continuous retraining or frequent career transitions. And the skills required in many occupations remain relatively stable, allowing professionals at that time to rely on knowledge and competencies acquired during their formal education. Organizations also operated primarily within national boundaries, meaning that professionals were less likely to engage with colleagues clients or partners from different cultural or linguistic backgrounds. International collaboration existed, but we generally limited to specific sectors and senior leadership roles. And as a result, success was often measured by technical competency, loyalty to organization, and the ability to perform effectively within a familiar local environment. Today, however, the professional landscape has changed dramatically. Professionals are now expected to update their knowledge regularly, adapt to changing industries, work across cultures and time zones, and develop a broader range of competencies that extend beyond technical expertise. I would have mentioned lifelong learning, adaptability, cultural intelligence, digital literacy, and global awareness. These are things that have become essential requirements for sustained professional success in the 21st century. Organizations operate within linked international markets. Business source products from multiple countries, universities recruit students globally, governments engage in regional partnerships, and of course, nonprofit organizations collaborate across continents to address shared challenges. A project manager in Barbados may coordinate activities with colleagues in Germany, Kenya, Indonesia, and Canada during the same working week. A university lecturer may teach students located across several countries. Currently, I'm giving this webinar to you guys and across Asia. Of course, you know, healthcare specialists may participate in an international knowledge sharing network that influence a pattern that is shared in China. The interconnectedness that we see today has created tremendous opportunity. Professionals can now access global markets, international partnerships, and worldwide learning opportunities that were previously unavailable. At the same time, these changes have increased competition because employers can recruit talent from a wider geographical pool, meaning professionals must distinguish themselves not only through technical expertise, but also through adaptability, communication skills, leadership capability, and cultural awareness. And the message is really clear. Professional success today requires a broader set of competencies, than we've seen 20, 30 years ago. A tourism executive in Barbados no longer competes solely with a neighboring Caribbean destination. A potential visitor from the United Kingdom who is planning a holiday may compare Barbados not only with destinations such as Jamaica, St. Lucia, but also Bali, Indonesia, or maybe Portugal or Cape Verde, through online travel platforms, social media, travel review websites. Travelers can now evaluate accommodation, attractions, service quality, sustainable initiatives, and overall value from destinations across the world within minutes. For example, a traveler considering a 7-day vacation may compare a luxury resort in Barbados with a wellness retreat in Bali. The decision may not be based solely on price, but also on factors such as digital booking, convenience, personalized customer service, or even cultural experience. Maybe they may even be looking at environmental responsibility or online reviews. If tourism provides um, a service that is above par, they also have to provide a trained people that is also above par. And as a result, tourism professionals must understand the interrelatedness to skills development. Um, you know, the question, I would ask is, how has your profession changed over the last years? And this is something you can think about as we progress through this presentation. Because for much of the modern history, academic qualifications and technical expertise were often viewed as the primary indicators of professional competence. While qualifications remain important, they're no longer sufficient on their own. Across industries, employers are looking, you know, for technical skills to secure employment, but interpersonal and leadership capabilities often determine long-term success in that employment. Imagine two professionals who possess identical technical qualifications. The first individual struggles to communicate ideas clearly, has difficulty adapting to change, and finds collaborating with others challenging. But the second individual demonstrates strong communication skills, works efficiently with diverse teams, remains adaptable during uncertainty, and consistently builds positive professional relationships. In most cases, the second professional will advance more rapidly because organizations depend upon collaboration, on trust, effective communication to achieve results. Professional excellence today involves the integration of knowledge and human capability. Leaders are expected to solve problems that involve multiple stakeholders, different perspectives, um, competing interests, complex cultural considerations. And these challenges cannot be addressed through technical expertise alone. They require judgment, they require empathy, and they require communication. Consider a hospital in a multicultural city such as Toronto or London, where patients can, from a wide range of cultural, linguistic backgrounds, emerge in the hospital or the care facility. And a highly skilled physician may have excellent diagnostic ability and a deep clinical knowledge, allowing them to identify complex conditions accurately. But if the physician is unable to communicate clearly with a patient who has limited proficiency in the dominant language, for example, and if they are unfamiliar with cultural attitudes towards illness, pain, or even medical decision making, misunderstanding can ensue. So, a patient from a culture where family consent plays a central role in healthcare decisions may feel uncomfortable with a physician who expects immediate individual consent for a procedure. Without cultural awareness and effective communication, the patient may delay treatment or lose trust in the healthcare system, even if the medical advice may be correct. In modern healthcare systems, patient care really delivered, by a single professional. Instead, it involves coordinated work between physicians, nurses, pharmacists, radiologists, um, and social workers, maybe even be a part of the team. Consider a patient recovering from a stroke. A physician may focus on medical stabilization while a physiotherapist works on mobility recovery, and a speech therapist maybe support communication rehabilitation. If a physician has strong technical expertise but lacks collaborative skills or fails to communicate effectively with a wider care team, the treatment plan can become fragmented. You know, um, this is very important because, these examples illustrate that while technical competence remains essential in healthcare, professional effectiveness depends on communication, cultural intelligence, and ability to work collaboratively across disciplines. And, you know, when we think about training and development, um, globalization is often discussed as an economic term, but its effects extend into nearly every aspect of professional life. At its core, globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness of countries, organizations, institutions, and individuals. Products manufactured in one country may rely on raw materials from another and be sold in dozens of additional markets. Universities develop partnerships that allow students to study internationally. Governments collaborate um, through regional organizations to address common concerns. And this includes non-government organizations as well. Businesses serve customers from multiple cultural backgrounds. A disruption in one region in the world can affect manufacturing, transportation, and retail operations thousands of miles away. And similarly, development in public health, climate policy, finance, markets, and technology can create ripple effects across multiple sectors and even countries. Professionals who understand these connections are often better equipped to identify opportunities, manage risks, and contribute to strategic decision making. Global awareness is no longer a specialist skill reserved for diplomats or multinational executives. Um, it is a practical necessity across a wide range of professions. Today, universities attract international students and establish global research partnerships. Business companies expand into international markets and serve multicultural customer bases. Um, Projects frequently involve governments, NGOs, donors, communities, and expats from multiple countries. And so the key fact of that is that global awareness is no longer optional. Understanding international trends and relationships enable professionals to make more informed decisions and also remain competitive in this 21st century. As globalization reshapes industries and professional organizations seek individuals who possess a distinct set of competencies that allow them to operate effectively in many different environments. You know, beyond qualifications, competencies, professionals have to really understand that today's employer values adaptability and flexibility. They value effective communication. They value critical thinking and problem solving. And of course, on top of that, cultural intelligence. Because an organization become more interconnected um, due to globalization, and employers are, looking for, persons who go beyond just demonstrating qualifications or even technical expertise. This does not mean that qualifications are unimportant. They still are very, very essential. Qualifications get you through the door, but they very often do not determine long-term success. Many organizations now speak about the importance of future-ready professionals. And these are individuals who can adapt to changing circumstances, learn new skills, collaborate effectively with others, and contribute positively to organizational culture. For example, consider two candidates applying for the same position. Both possess similar educational backgrounds and technical competence. One candidate demonstrates strong communication skills, emotional intelligence, cultural awareness, and a willingness to learn. The other possess technical competence but struggle with collaboration and adaptability. And in many cases, the first candidate will be viewed as having greater long-term potential because organizations recognize that professional environments are dynamic. And that means that you have to be flexible. The modern workplace requires individuals who can solve problems, who can navigate ambiguity, communicate across cultures, and build productive relationships. Employers are understand that knowledge can be taught, but qualities such as integrity, adaptability, professionalism, these often determine how effectively the knowledge is actually applied. Many multinational organizations now use behavioral interviews, that focus on um, they focus on more on situations involving teamwork, leadership, conflict resolution, and communication. And some questions may, include things like tell us about the time you work with a difficult team member or describe a situation where you adapted to significant change, or explain how you resolve a misunderstanding with someone from a different background. And these questions reveal the growing importance of professional competence beyond technical expertise. Um, you know, I might, if employers value these broader competencies, the next question becomes, how do professionals develop the ability to work effectively across cultural boundaries? And this brings me to one of the important skills of the 21st century that I have found through my work and throughout the region, what we call cultural intelligence. Cultural intelligence is really the ability to understand, respect, work effectively with people from different cultural backgrounds, and it covers things like awareness, curiosity, respect, adaptability, communication, and relationship building. Cultural intelligence is not memorizing stereotypes. Cultural intelligence is not assuming everyone from a culture behave the same way, and it is not abandoning your own cultural identity. When people hear the term cultural intelligence, they often assume it refers simply to knowledge about different countries. But in reality, cultural intelligence is much broader. It is the ability to recognize cultural differences, understand how those differences influence behavior, and shape and adapt appropriately within a situation as your authentic self with respect. Um, Consider this simple example. In some cultures, direct communication is viewed as an honest um, and an efficient way of doing business. In other cultures, indirect communication is viewed as respect and relationship oriented. Neither approach is inherently wrong or right. Problems arise when individuals assume that their own communication styles is universal standard. Cultural intelligence helps professionals, avoid misunderstanding. It actually encourages curiosity rather than judgment, and it promotes understanding rather than assumption. As workplaces become more internationally nuanced, cultural intelligence becomes a professional necessity rather than a desirable extra skill that someone can tack on. Professionals with strong cultural intelligence are often more successful at building trust, at managing teams, negotiating partnerships, and creating productive relationships. A Caribbean manager working with a colleague in Japan or Germany, or Brazil may encounter very different approaches to meetings, deadlines, decision making, or even communication. Cultural intelligence enables the manager to navigate these different constructively. Cultural intelligence is not about becoming someone else. That is what I really want to get across in this presentation. Cultural intelligence is about becoming more effective when working with people who see the world different from you. Um, to develop cultural intelligence, we must first understand how cultural intelligence um, influences our behavior because it influences our communication, influences our relationships, it influences time, it influences how we see authority, it influences decision making, and it also influences conflict. Um, Cultural influences more than our language, it influences more than our food or our traditions. It shapes assumptions people carry into professional environments every day. For example, consider attitudes towards time. In some professions or some cultures, punctuality is considered a sign of professionalism and respect. In others, like for example, in Europe, punctuality is considered professional. If you lived in Brazil, like I did, or worked in Brazil, you would know that they have a more laid back view of being on time. In other places, professional cultures, punctuality is considered a sign of professionalism and respect. Similarly, approaches to leadership can vary significantly according to the culture that you're in. Others value consultation, consensus building before action is taken. Even the concept of professional networking differs across cultures. In some regions, professional relationships develop primarily through formal interactions. In others, trust is often established through informal conversations, social engagement, barbecues. Um, a lot of the partnerships that I formed have formed over business meetings, barbecues, so understanding the differences helps professionals avoid unnecessary misunderstanding, strained relationships. What might be, considered great behavior in one country may be considered an attack in another country. A manager interprets a collective silence during the meeting as disagreement. In another environment, they might discover that the room, was just assessing or thinking or coming up with a solution. So this misunderstanding was not about competence, but is about cultural expectation. Have you ever misunderstood someone's behavior because of cultural differences? When I lived in Brazil, I had to navigate culture a lot, and it taught me a lot about navigating conflict, dealing with relationships, building trust, um, developing consistency, being transparent, learning empathy, and also demonstrating professional integrity. Um, Trust matters. Trust matters because trust influences team performance. It influences leadership effectiveness, our partnerships. It influences negotiations, customer relationships, and even organization representation. Regardless of nationality, profession, or industry, successful professional relationships depend upon trust. Trust is often described as the currency of collaboration. Without trust, communication becomes guarded, innovation declines, teams become less effective, and partnerships become fragile. Or one important lesson from global professionals is that trust develops differently across cultures. In some environments, trust is built primarily through demonstrated competence. People want to know that you can perform effectively. In other environments, trust develops primarily through relationships. People want to know who you are before deciding whether they will work with you or not. Professionals who understand this distinction are often more successful when operating internationally. Building trust requires patience. It requires consistency between words and actions. Most importantly, it requires respect, because people may forget what you say, but they really forget how you made them feel. And that is something that I learned abroad when working with international colleagues. You know, um, the practical application is learn about the context, show genuine interest, follow through on your commitments, communicate clearly, and avoid assumptions. Small actions often build significant trust over time. And, you know, I believe that as we work across borders, being able to understand cultural culture stems from being able to reflect. I would encourage you to think about a time when cultural differences influence your communication. Um, what happened? What assumptions did you make about maybe the culture? What assumptions may the other person may have made about you? How was the situation resolved? If it was a conflict situation, what lessons did you learn across the way? Because learning often begins with reflection. Um, For the next few minutes, I would like to invite you to think about a situation where cultural differences influence your communication. This could have occurred in a workplace, during travel, in education, during a community engagement, or even through an online interaction. Um, how, do not focus on assigning blame at this time. Instead, I want you to focus on understanding. Ask yourself these questions. What assumptions existed? What expectations differed between you and the individual or the team or the group? What could have been handled differently in your opinion? This exercise reminds us that cultural intelligence develops through experience, it develops through reflection, and it also develops through learning. The goal is not perfection. The goal here is progress. So I want to leave you with a case study because an international development project include team members from, let's say, Barbados, Germany, Indonesia, or Brazil. Project deadlines begin slipping, communication becomes strained, team members express frustration. Some believe others are unresponsive. Others feel communication is overtly, um, direct or impersonal. So my questions to you to think about on this case study is what might be causing the misunderstandings based on what we've talked about today. Because um, when we do a workshop or a webinar, you must also have applicable information. And the best way is to be able to reflect and to learn and to apply. How could cultural differences influence perceptions? What actions could improve the collaboration? And what leadership strategies do you think would help? This case study challenges commonly experienced assumptions. You notice that one is necessarily acting in bad faith. The difficulties arise because individuals are interpreting behavior through the different cultural lenses that they wear. We all wear cultural lenses, and those lenses are shaped by our education, is shaped by our upbringing, is shaped by our experiences. One team member may value efficiency and direct communication. Maybe um, they're in a part of the world that sees value demonstrated through efficiency and direct communication. Another may place greater emphasis on relationship building and consensus, more diplomatic, for example. Um, Without cultural awareness, each side may incorrectly assume that the other is being difficult. A culturally intelligent leader should recognize these differences and facilitate conversations that create mutual understanding. The objective here is not to eliminate differences. The objective is actually to manage them constructively. Diversity is really a strength when it is seen through the eyes of understanding and respect. And so I think that as we close off here, I want to say thank you so very much to MIE International Modern Education for having me give a presentation on international professional development skills for the 21st century. Thank you so very much. Hello,
Hello.
I'm
Have
I'm
you?
finished.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Uh, Interesting summary for professional development. In case you have a question, please to unmute yourself and ask your question, or in case you would like to have more clarification on some points, so please to unmute yourself. to ask your point or your question. Shira, yeah, okay, unmute please.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
Hello,
Yeah.
Shira.
Yeah. I'm very pleased to join the section. And
Welcome.
I really enjoyed the presentation. It was awesome. I want to find out when this section will end for today and if everybody has to do the presentation at once today.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Concerning the question is actually for the host.
Okay,
I
sure.
want to find out if everyone is doing this presentation and when this meeting, this webinar will end.
Yes, this webinar will be recorded, and we will send to you the recording session, and it will be uploaded on our channel as well, on our YouTube channel, as the other sessions, and we will present in a few minutes our profile for MIE, just as a summary. In case you would like to have more clarifications, please to clarify more on your question.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you too. More question, please. Have you more questions? Okay. In all cases, for the attendance, we remind you that you will receive vouchers and guides from our side. In addition to the recording of the session, you will receive guides and vouchers in addition to that. For certificate, we will send to you the process for receiving the certificate. For presenting just a summary about MIE as modern international education, we are mainly focusing on three sectors: technologies and engineering, management and leadership, and economics and sociology. Today, the session is related to economics and sociology for professional development. We have multiple programs as well, and our target audience for multiple type of professionals, job seekers, university students, employees, managers, and trainers. Also, companies, enterprises as well. Mainly, we have two sectors. We provide trainings and consultations for corporates and actually for individuals as well. We have also another sector for technologies and software for education and learning, like learning management systems, digital library, ebooks, guides in the digital library with the plans for subscribing by corporates or by individuals. You will have multiple options for subscription in this sector for technologies like learning management system or digital library, for having access on our digital library as ebooks and guides. Also, software development, software engineering. We provide software development, software engineering solutions for education and learning. And we are focusing on consultations and consulting sector for corporate, for research as well, for the projects of corporates or for the projects of individual. Mainly, those are our sectors in MIE. We are accredited from JPA as European University and European Academy, also from American Canadian Board for Professional Training. We have collaboration with the Cisco Academy and Global Board, among other collaborators. We have here accreditation partner, also from quality body for education. We have also an accreditation from them. Have cooperations with multiple organization as well. Just it was a summary about what we provide from MIE. In case you have questions, please
Do you have a question?
okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you for all.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
To be closed?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Daisley, as well.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.